Hi guys, welcome to Power Cubicle Guy. In today's show, we are going to implement web apps. This is one of the labs of AZ-104 Microsoft Azure Administrator, and it's also present in the Microsoft Learning website. And this is a video demonstration of the same. As part of this lab, there will be 6 tasks. Task 1 is to create an Azure Web App, which is this one. Task 2 is creating a staging deployment slot, which you can see here in this box down. Task 3 is to configure a web app deployment settings, which is again inside this task 2. Task 4 is deploy code to the staging deployment slot, which is here. Task 5 is swapping the staging slots, which is here. Task 6 is configure and test auto scaling of the Azure Web App, which is here. So let's dig in and see how this can be done. But before that, a small intro. Alrighty. For the task 1, which is creating an Azure Web App, let's search App Services, which is here. Click on Create. Here in the resource group, click on Create New and paste the resource group name as present in the lab. Click on OK. Give a globally unique name. I'll name it according to my channel. Let's see if it is present. PCG Power. Okay. Runtime stack as PHP 7.3 and select this as Windows. Region I'll select as Australia Southeast, and app service plan we will select the default configuration. Click on Review plus Create. It's validating. Now click on Create. Deployment is in progress. Deployment is complete, and hence our task 1 for creating the web app is complete. Let's start task number 2, which is creating a staging deployment slot. Go to the resource. Click on this web URL, which is pcgpower.azurewebsites.net, and see this is the default page as of now. Close the browser window. Now in the deployment section, click on deployment slots. You see here only production slot is present. Now click on add slot. Give the name as a staging. For clone settings, let it be default setting. Do not clone the settings, and click on add. It's creating a new slot, staging. Okay, so the staging slot is created. Close this and click on the staging slot created. Note that its URL differs from the one assigned to the production slot. So here you can see a word staging. Click on that and see it will go again to that default website. Close this. So this completes our task number 2. Now let's start task number 3, which is to configure web app deployment settings. So remain on this staging slot and click on the deployment center, which is here in the deployment section. And under the settings tab in the source drop down list, select local Git. Okay. And click on Save button. So here a Git clone URI is generated. Copy that. We will be using this URL later, so copy it there. And on the local Git credentials, in the user scope section, specify a username and password. So here I have specified my PCG as the username, and I'll type in a password as well. hit on save. Alrighty, so this completes our task number 3, which is to configure web app deployment settings. Now let's start with task number 4, which is to deploy the code to the staging deployment slot we created earlier. So open the Azure Cloud Shell by clicking this icon. If you don't have a storage mounted, so click on Create a Storage. So the next step is to clone the remote repository containing the code for the web app. So we will paste the command of git clone and you will see cloning gets started. Alright, so cloning is done. Now we will run another command to set the current location to the newly created clone of the local repository containing the sample web app code. Alright, now we will run another command to add the remote git. So here we have to specify our username, which is mypcg. mypcg, and you remember you copied the URL earlier. Copy that URL here and enter. Now the next step is to run another command to push the sample web app code from the local repository to the Azure Web App staging deployment slot. Right, now we will paste that command here and we will type our username master, right, pass in the username password. It's writing the objects. Alright, deployment is successful. Now close this Cloud Shell pane and on the staging slot, click on this default URL of a staging slot and you see here a hello world is displayed. This is what we have deployed in the staging environment. Alright, now this completes our task number 4. The next task is to swap the staging slot. Click the deployment slots and then click the swap button here. Now you see the source is staging and the target is PCG power, which is the production slot. Now click on swap and it's performing the swap between staging and production. Once this is done, we will verify that the default web page, which is the production link, should be replaced with hello world page. So swap is done. Close this pane and go to the overview and click on the URL. So you see the default URL now displays the hello world page. Alright, so this completes our task number 5. Now task 6 is to configure and test the auto scaling of the Azure Web App. Now in the settings section, click scale out. Let's search scale out, click this. Now click on custom auto scale, leave the default option scale based on a metric and click on add a rule here. Metric source as current resource and time aggregation as maximum. Metric namespace as app service plans, standard metrics, and this one as CPU percentage, operator greater than 10, duration 1 minute. Remember, we are changing these settings just to demo the scale out. In real world scenario, these values not represent a real configuration. Alright, because since the purpose of this demo is just to trigger auto scaling as soon as possible without extended wait period. duration 1 minute, time grain maximum here, and click on add. Here the instance limit, change the maximum to 2, minimum 1, and default as 1. Hit on save. Now it's updating the auto scale configuration and it's updated. Now open the Azure Cloud Shell. And run a command to identify the URL of the Azure Web App. Run another command to start an infinite loop so that it sends the HTTP request to the web app. Minimize the Cloud Shell pane and go in the monitoring section and click on Process Explorer. It's loading. Hit on refresh. So you see here there are 2 instances created. So this is how it's doing the auto scaling. Right, now go back to the Cloud Shell and hit Ctrl+C to terminate this script. Close the Cloud Shell pane. Alrighty, so this completes the task number 6 as well. Hope all the tasks we did in order makes sense, and if you want any clarification on any step, please do let me know in the comment section. If you like the video, please give it a big thumbs up, and please do remember to subscribe to Power Cubicle Guy. Thank you guys and see ya.